Celebration Spiritual Center. Let us stand as we prepare to open with prayer. And this morning, our prayer champion, Vanessa, will lead us in prayer.
Good morning. We relax ourselves into the space knowing that here and now, there is one truth, there is one power, there is one presence, there is one wisdom, and we call it God, we call it Source, we call it the Great Spirit, the one consciousness, the one mind that is all the love and light and expression of all the life that we can think of and well beyond what we could ever have imagined. Mother, Father God, we thank you for the knowledge that you are the one operating in, through, and as all of life. Operating in, through, and as all people, Mother, Father God, I know that not only are you my breath, you are closer than my very breath. You are every single cell, just automatically at all times knowing what it is to say yes to life. In, through, and as me. In, through, and as everyone. In, through, and as all places and times, Mother, Father God. It is so beautiful to know that we are all individualized manifestations of that which is everything, of that which is abundance and harmony and health and wholeness, of that which is perfectly operating and creating at all times, Mother, Father God. We know who and whose we are today. And so we know that anything, any thought or belief that is not this perfection is simply not true. Anything that represents a limitation, a fear, a doubt, or worry has no place in this truth, has no place in the operation of your perfection in our lives, Mother, Father God. So we release it here and now, Mother, Father God. We release any fear, doubt, and worry that we may have, for we know that just as the seasons change, just as people may change, just as places may change, just as circumstances may get stirred up, we know that one thing remains the same, and that is your perfect operation, your love, your abundance. More remains the same, that we are perfect, whole, and complete. More remains the same, that we are at all times receiving your guidance and seeing it manifest and express and expand into all of life. And so as we move forward with our lives, we trust each step that we are taking, and we trust each movement that is happening around us, because that is you moving, Mother, Father God, in, through, and as and all around us, Mother, Father God. I am thanking you for reminding me of what stays the same as each day passes. And I'm thanking you for how I will hear that truth and receive that message at Celebration Spiritual Center today. I'm thanking you for the word, for the music, for the hugs, and the endless summer festivities that are to come. I'm thanking you for all the ways that you nurture us with food and with color and with conversation and with this beautiful celebration that we have here today. And so it is this expectation that I'm affirming into the law that always responds perfectly and lovingly and ever expandingly. And it is on this faith and gratitude that we move forward with this day with Amen, Ashe. So it is.
So we celebrate being right here, right now, in the present moment. The past is gone, the future is yet to come, and we are here now. Yes, yes? All right, let's go. I can feel my feet on the ground. I'm in the present moment now. What a joyful place I found. Here in the present moment now. I am here now. I am here now. Leaving my worries at the door. Opening to more love and joy. Celebrate with me now. We're in the present moment now. Yes, yes, we are. We are here now. Doesn't matter what happened on this week, you made it. You're here now. Now let's just take a breath. Let's take a breath. We think I breathe in, I breathe out. I'm in the present moment now. The easiest way to return back to the present is putting your focus on your breath. So we breathe in through our nose and we breathe out through our mouth. Here in the present, problems seem so small. Here in the present, all my giants fall. Here in the present, problems seem so Well, good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. It is so good to see each and every one of you. It is so good to have you here. On behalf of myself and Pastor Yolanda, I just want to welcome each and every one of you here to our service, to our weekend service, where we know the truth. We celebrate the magnificence of God in you, through you, and as you. There is nothing but God, and it is good. That means, as PY tells us every week, that means that the very seat that you're sitting in right now, the presence of God is present. If you are present, God is present. Because it lives in you, through you, and as you. And so as we prepare to move in and through our service today, I want to remind you all that we believe that everything is absolutely spiritual here at CSC. Yes, yes? And that includes your cell phones. So if you have a cell phone and you have not already done so, I invite you to put your phone on vibrate to spiritualize your cell phone. You don't have to turn it off, but spiritualize it so that you don't disturb your neighbor to your left or to your right. And at the same time, we encourage you to check in, let us know where you, let your friends and family know where you are. Feel free to tweet or post something that you may have heard in the service that touches you, for we know the truth, as A Course in Miracles teaches us, that all minds are joined. And so when you post something, when you document this truth that has resonated with you, you are actually documenting it for your brothers and sisters, and it will resonate with them, and you may be their minister on today. You may be the light that they need. You may bring the word that they need to hear on this day. And so as we welcome each and every one of you, I know that we have some first-time guests here. And when Pastor Yolanda and I were visiting CSC, one of the things that was important to us is that we wanted to create an atmosphere that felt like family. And so for us, that meant that anyone who comes to CSC for the first time is not a visitor, but you are a guest. You are a guest in our home. You are a guest in our hearts. And so if we have any first-time guests here this morning, I invite you to stand just briefly. You won't have to talk. You won't have to say anything. We welcome you, and we are so happy to have you. Each and every one of you in your welcome package should have received this blue connection card. We invite you to fill it out so that we can stay in touch with you and keep you informed about what's going on at CSC and all of the wonderful things that we have happening for the remainder of the year and moving forward. Please have a seat. And so, as I said, we here at CSC, we believe something very powerful, that our guests are not visitors, but you're family, but that's the truth of everyone here. So the first time you come, you're a guest. But when you come back, you're family. It's sort of like when you come to somebody's house, the first time you got to be shown where the bathroom is and where to get the cups and all of that. But the next time you come, it's like, just go in and get it yourself, right? That's the vibration that we live in here at CSC. So the first time you come, you're a guest. The second time you come, you're family. So I invite all of us right here, right now, to greet each other as family. We are a family. And so I invite each and every one of you, this is the point in our service where we usually take some truth and we put it to song, or we take an idea that will move us and that we can use and take throughout our week. And I thought it would be good to do this song this Sunday because it's really a song of preparation. It says, I open my heart and I listen. I open my heart and I listen. I open my heart and I listen. I open up my heart. And we say, I open up my mind. I open up my life. And this song came to me one morning as I was journaling and really wanting to hear what it is that Source wanted to say to me and through me. Asking questions, seeking direction, seeking guidance. And as I was writing and living in those questions, I realized that I must move into a space of allowing. And so I began to write those words. I open up my heart. I open up my mind. I open up my life to listen. What we know about life is, in this world of duality, if there's a question, there must be an answer, right? If there's a right, there must be a left. If there's an up, there must be a down. That's the truth of duality. So when you have a question, the answer exists. The reason we think many times that we're not being answered is because we're not opening ourselves up to listen. And so this song is an invitation. It's a prayer of receptivity to open up our very hearts, our minds, and our lives and listen to what, as Reverend Michael says, the eternal broadcast is always broadcasting. There is something that love wants to do in, through, and as your life. But we must listen to the broadcast. I open up. I open my heart and I listen. I open my heart and I listen. I open my heart and I listen. I open up my heart. Soul 21, can we sing that? I open my heart and I listen. I open my heart. For the heart is the very altar of God. I open up my heart. I open my mind and I listen. Letting go of all of those false thoughts. Letting go of all of those limiting beliefs. I open my mind. I open my mind and I listen. I open up my mind. I open my very life and I listen. I make my entire life available to love. Available to this thing that is seeking to happen in, through, and as me. I open up my life. I open up my life. The heart is the very altar of God, for the heart is the place of love. And we know the truth that God is love. And we know that perfect love casts out all fear. So as we open up our hearts, as we open up our minds, as we open up our lives, we are letting go of fear, we are letting go of doubt, we are letting go of worry, and we are singing, I open up. I open up. Hey, I open up. I open up. I open up my heart. I open up my heart. Yeah. I open up my heart. I open up. I'm available and ready to be used. Yeah. open up my heart. Open up my heart. Let me just play, just keep playing softly, softly, softly. I want us to live in the receptivity of this prayer.
Yes, yes.
I open up my heart. Can we sing? I open up. I open up. I open up my heart. See, it's interesting, right? Many times we have an experience and we say, oh, that was such a heart-opening experience. The truth of life is we should always live with our heart open. That's actually our default position, to live with a heart open. But so often as we live this life, we are taught to create boundaries. And as we live this life, we're taught to block people out. And as we live this life, we've been hurt. And as we live this life, we live in unforgiveness. And as we live this life, and so we begin to close our hearts. But it is only through an open heart that you can hear the voice of God. It is only through an open heart that you can hear the voice of love. So we open. Yeah, yeah.
My name is Gabby, and I'm so happy to see each and every one of you this Sunday morning. Now, one thing that you will learn about CSC is that our mission, vision, and purpose guide everything that we do. The vision. Celebration Spiritual Center is a God experience that turns on the heart, mind, and soul of the world. A God experience is the realization of oneness that transcends material sense. Our mission and purpose is to awaken the world to the presence of God within and all around us. Celebrate this truth as one family, embody unconditional love, equip humanity to live our greatest lives, and serve all creation. The centering thought for this month's meditation is, I will be still an instant and go home. And the song for the month is, Return Again. We continue the September message series, Reimagine the Bible, Reclaiming Our Power. There's an African proverb that says, until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter. The wisdom within this African proverb reveals one of the key reasons that the Bible is so widely misused and misapplied. In many cases, the writers of the biblical stories were the hunters. When the authority of the hunter is not questioned, he remains the hero of the story and becomes the accepted model for how we should live our lives. What if the heroes of many beloved biblical stories are not heroes at all? What if we have been led to celebrate victories that are actually unjust abuses of power? What if, what if the world we have inherited has been created in part because of these false narratives? This month, as we return to the Reimagine the Bible series, we will examine familiar biblical stories with fresh eyes. We will question our assumptions, and we will question the biblical interpretations we were taught to be fact. As we learn to question these biblical stories, we become empowered to question any other cultural or familiar stories that cause unneeded suffering and pain. Together, we will reclaim our power and create a world that reflects the best of all of us. Pastor Greg's topic today is the power of cycles and seasons. And now it's time for your CSC news and updates. We're back to regular hours. Doors open at 10:30 a.m. and the celebration begins promptly at 11 a.m. Endless summer, y'all. Yes. Join us today from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. for our friends and family outdoor event outside under the tent on the plaza. We'll have food and fellowship. It's going to be a great time. PY will provide additional instructions at the end of service. So guys, this is going to be fun. I'm excited. Now, do you have a prosperous mindset?
Yes.
Okay. A prosperous mindset will open doors for you, will bring ease and flow to all your activities, and it will heal relationships and bring freedom and joy. You can have all of these things and more in 12 weeks or less. Go to celebrationsc.org/register to learn more about the 4T Prosperity Program and how you can study the principles of prosperity with Pastor Greg and Pastor Yolanda. Class begins on Thursday, September 26th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. This is the final 4T class of 2019, so sign up today. Come get clarity about what's going on in your life. Pastor Greg and Pastor Yolanda are here to support you in applying what you learn at CSC to your daily life experiences. Join us next Sunday, September 15th at 1 p.m. for the God Talk. No question is off limits. Fill up your morning cup. PGPY and the Prayer Champions pray with us and for us every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Start your day by knowing the truth of who and whose you are. Call details can be found at the host table on our website and social media. Connect with us this Wednesday and fill up your cup. Text to give. It's fast, it's easy, and it's secure. Text your dollar amount to 347-744-9500, then follow the prompts. Minimum donation is $10. Again, the phone number is 347-744-9500. Try it out today. Now, just a few short housekeeping reminders. Food and drink is not allowed in the sanctuary except for water. However, we do ask that you keep your beverage covered. Also, no audio or video recording is permitted during service. Thank you for celebrating with us, and we'll see you next week.
Well, good morning, everyone. We've come to one of my favorite times in our service, the time where we get still. I love how Course in Miracles says we can get still an instant and go home. We sometimes think that we got to read the right books to tap into Source. We have to have studied with the right teachers. But if you think about an instant, it's just a breath. That's all it takes to connect to Source. Get still and go home. Many times we have all of this knowledge, but we have no experience of God. And God is a felt reality. You can have every book, you can study every text. You can watch every Super Soul Sunday. But until you feel God for yourself, within yourself, you don't know God. And God is always available right there at the breath and where the heart and the breath meet. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to go home today. We're going to get still an instant today and take this time to go within ourselves and find the God that is always available. So I ask at this point in our service if you would release anything that you're holding on your lap. Make sure that your phones are silenced. And go ahead and begin the journey by bringing your feet to the floor. And as you bring your feet to the floor, allow your back to rest against the chair. And then close your eyes. That simple act of closing the eyes to the external conditions begins the inward descent. And as you sit with eyes closed, begin to notice the breath. Just notice how the breath is moving, where it's moving. No judgment of it. And now, bring your focus to the feet. Relax the feet. Allow the toes to spread, the heels to surrender into the floor. And that energy begins to create a force field that travels up the ankles. And now imagine that energy flowing up the calves and up the shins. Energy now flows across the knees. Relax the knees. Energy flowing across the thighs towards the seat. Relax the hips. Relax the seat. And now we bring our focus to the subtle body, this internal energy, life force. Imagine the energy traveling up the spine, crossing each chakra, activating, spinning each vortex, balancing it all, and now flowing up and up and up, out the crown of the head. Imagine the energy collecting above us all, enfolding us in this love. And now, energy flows back down through the crown, across the shoulders and down the arms. And if you turn the palms up and relax them down on your lap, you will feel a collection of energy in the palm. A gentle breeze, a gentle kiss from the universe. We remain open here. And let's begin to breathe together. Bring your focus to the right side of the body. And together, inhale up the right side. Inhale. And exhale down the left side. Inhale up the left side. Exhale down the right. Inhale up the right. And exhale down the left. 2 more rounds on your own, inhaling up and exhaling down. Imagine yourself being held by the universe. Just rock gently, energy flowing up and flowing down. center to the low belly. And together, inhale, expand the low belly. Hold it there. Open the mouth and release. Beautiful. Inhale, expanding the low belly up through the rib cage now. Expand the front and the sides and the back of the body. Open the mouth and let it go. And this time, inhale all the way up through the heart chakra, center of the chest. Hold it there. Open the mouth and let go. Again, smooth flow of energy, breath all the way in and up. Hold it there at the heart, creating a new set point, new reality. And now release anything that you're holding on to. This time, inhale all the way up through the heart. Hold it there. Close the lips and exhale through the nose, nice and easy. This will be our form of breath for the remainder of our meditation. In and out through the nose. As you follow the breath and the energy, you begin to feel this sensation of relaxation. Each breath relaxes you more. And as you take in the sensation, you notice, as if in the distance, something calling you to return to yourself, the real you, the whole you. And as we sing these words, you just follow that vibration deeper and deeper and deeper. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul. this vibration. And as we go into our silent time, we will monitor the time. You just take the journey. Get still an instant and go home. And let every voice, but the voice that is love, calling you home, let it be still. Now. With our eyes still closed, we absorb all that we feel on the inside. We allow our internal gauge, our internal GPS to guide us from this point forward. We're connected to the answers. We're connected to the peace. We're always connected to the love that is God. Anytime you feel disconnected, come back to this that you gave yourself. It will be there for you. Close as your breath, closer than your heartbeat.
Return again. Return.
There's a message and song that we've been conveying over the past few weeks that I think is just something that we all need to continuously hear. A few weeks ago, we said, I expect the good, always expect the good. Last week, we sang, things are always working out for me. And this week, we are saying it another way. Your latter will be greater than the rest, and the best is yet to come. I absolutely know that there is someone here that needs to hear the truth in the words of this song. It does not matter what happened throughout your life from then to now. It does not matter what happened yesterday. It does not matter what happened last week or last year. No matter what has happened, there is good on the other side of it. The affirmation I love, our prayer champion, Darla, I don't think she's here today. Nothing but good can come from this. And so as we live in that vibration, that is why we can affirm the best is yet to come. Possible. power and possibility of this affirmation. If you don't take any other part of this song with you, I invite you to take this part with you. It simply says the best is yet to come. Nothing but good can come from this. Even if your life is good right now, my sister, my brother, there's more. There is gooder and gooder. There is better and better. There is best and bestest. And best and bestest. And so we live in the truth and know that life is not finished and life is not fixed. But there is good on the way. Oh, the best is yet to come. Yes, it is, yeah. Oh, the best is there. Can I get a witness in the building? Oh, the best is yet to come. Is yet to come. If life is good, there's more coming. And if you're seeking a change, there is change coming. The best is yet to come. Oh, to come. Your best is yet. Your best, your best. Your best, your best. Yeah. See, some of you have not experienced best yet. And so when we say your best is yet to come, you think you've experienced good. You ain't experienced good yet. So I'm affirming the best is coming. Something that you have not seen. Something that you have not tasted. Something that you have not experienced. Something that has not been witnessed by your very eyes. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I gotta leave that alone. Thank you, Soul 21. Thank you, Soul 21. Thank you, CSC band. Yes. Well, good morning again. Welcome to our first-time guests. It's so good to see your faces. I'm seeing some out-of-town faces, some folks we haven't seen in a minute, and I'm so glad that y'all took the time to come up to Brooklyn. And it's so good. Looking forward to having a good time with each and every one of you later as we hang out in the tent. I do have a word for today, and you know, my job is to listen. I have sometimes begin the process of preparing. Oftentimes I've led in a direction that I did not expect. But I recognize, again, it's my job is to listen. There is a collective asking. There's a collective conversation that's happening. And I simply tune into that frequency, tune into that broadcast. And so I know that this message is a message that's being called forth. And so I invite you to keep your ears, your hearts, and your minds open to what's being shared today. Now, we started last week with the message, Loving Jezebel. We went to the book of Kings, and we looked at that story of Jezebel to really change our perspective on who and what Jezebel is, recognizing that the whole idea of a Jezebel spirit and the ways in which women are victimized and vilified as a result of this story, it's a problem. And so took us back to the story to really look at who Jezebel really was and recognize that it has nothing to do with a Jezebel spirit or the evil spirit or so-called loose women or all the mess that people try to espouse as the truth, using this woman as the source of that. And so I invite you to go back to that message if you haven't heard it, and if you need to be healed of those beliefs around the feminine. So today we're going to look at Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. Now, the thing about the Old Testament or the First Testament that we have to acknowledge is that the First Testament is filled with lots of war and lots of violence. It actually, war and violence really fills up the bulk, I would say, of the First Testament, and particularly when we come from the Moses story forward, right? Moses to Joshua to the Judges and the Kings. There's just nothing but war and violence. And the way that it's written about, it's written about in a way that's matter of fact. It's written about in a way that's sort of the natural outcome. This is how it should be. This is what was supposed to happen because this violence is justified because this is what Yahweh or Jehovah commanded. So no one ever really questions that these wars were just. No one ever questions if this violence was something that should or should not have happened. And so I want to take us to the text. We're going to look at this story of Jericho, and then we're going to question the text a little bit. So I'm in Joshua 6, verse 1 through 5. Now Jericho was shut up inside and out because of the Israelites. No one came out and no one went in. The Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have handed Jericho over to you, along with its king and soldiers. You shall march around the city, all the warriors circling the city once. Thus you shall do for 6 days, with 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, the priests blowing the trumpets. When they make a long blast with the ram's horn, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all of the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and all the people shall charge straight ahead." We know that, right? That's the essential story of Jericho, right? That Joshua was commanded by God and given this plan that they would walk around the city of Jericho, the walls of Jericho, with the 7 priests. They would do that for 6 days. On the 7th day, they would do that 7 times, and then blow their horns, the walls would fall. So we go forward to same chapter in verses 15 and 16. On the 7th day, they rose early at dawn. They had already done the first 6 days. and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpets, they raised a great shout, and the wall fell down flat. So the people charged straight ahead into the city and captured it. Then they devoted to destruction by the edge of the sword all in the city, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys. So first and foremost, you hear that last line, right? You hear what happened? If you don't take anything else from this message, and we're going to talk about a whole lot, but can we just agree to stop using Jericho as a metaphor or inspiration for what God is doing in our life? When we read that line, they devoted to destruction by the edge of the sword, all in the city, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys. The Battle of Jericho is a massacre. It should be called the Massacre at Jericho. And unfortunately, because this text has been spiritualized over and over again, we have folks that are always preaching and teaching or affirming, that this is God has a battle plan for my life, and I may not understand it, or I'm facing my Jericho, or they teach us a story about persistence, right, and obedience. You may not understand what God is doing. God said walk for 6 days, and then on the 7th day walk around 7 times. You may not understand God's plan, but keep going, have faith, be persistent, because the walls will come tumbling down. They devoted to destruction by the edge of the sword, all in the city, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys. It was a massacre. For us to use the massacre at Jericho as a source of inspiration would be like us taking what's called, in this country, the battle at Wounded Knee, again, another massacre, where innocent indigenous peoples were killed, men, women, and children, and we would say, God has given me my wounded knee. And I'm so grateful and thankful that now here in Congress, there's an act in Congress that is seeking to remove those medals that were given to soldiers. There were 20 medals of honor that were given in celebration of this massacre. Grateful that that's being taken away. I was thinking about another idea. You may know about Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yes. It would be the same thing as if we were saying, God has given me my Black Wall Street. Because that was a massacre of innocent people. There's nothing in the text that says anything about who Jericho was, who the people were. We're led to assume, and I talked about this last week, that the voice of the writers, it's the Deuteronomistic history. When we understand that the goal of the writers was, it had a nationalistic purpose. The purpose was to justify really the kingdom and the reign of Josiah. And so everything that's written in that story from Deuteronomy through 2 Kings is all a setup to lead us to supposedly believing that Josiah indeed was God's chosen. And so when we understand that, we have to question the text. We have to look at that. Another massacre that has taken place in this country, Rosewood. This is what Jericho was, y'all. This was not some beautiful spiritual thing that God was doing. So if you take nothing else from this, we must stop using Jericho as a metaphor or inspiration for what God is doing in our lives. And so as I share this information and we question the text, of course, that all sounds good. And so we recognize that when we understand this violence, we can no longer find glory in this story because it was a massacre. But what's interesting is the violence in there. You turn the page and you keep reading, you find that they took, in the text it says, they took all the silver, gold, bronze, and iron because they were quote-unquote sacred to the Lord. So not only was it violent, but they stole all the people's money. They killed all of their oxen and cattle, which was a sign of wealth, right? And then next you turn the page, there's an ambush at Ai. They killed the king of Ai, and then the text says, and 12,000 men, women, and children. Massacre. But this is God's doing. We're supposed to find glory and joy in this text. And if that's not enough, you turn the page again, and then you find out they go to the Gibeonites. And I love this part of the story because see, what was happening, because Joshua and his evil army in the name of the Lord were going around massacring and killing folk and taking over land that didn't belong to them. It's just like the way the United States moved west, you know that whole thing. Same story. The reason why there were these wars of violence in the text is because there were people that were already living in the so-called land that God was giving them. So they had to steal it. They had to fight. They had to kill in order to take it. In the same way that happened again in this country. Most of the West Coast should be Mexico. Right? And so you turn the page, and what happened, because the Gibeonites heard about what happened. They heard about what happened in Jericho. They heard about what happened in Ai with King Achan and how he was killed, and 12,000 men, women, and children. Oh, and they took gold and silver there too. That's a whole nother story. But they just heard what was going on. So the Gibeonites said, okay, here's what we do, y'all. Let's act like we ain't got nothing. And so when they get here, we're just gonna be like, oh, Joshua, you all, we have nothing for you. We surrender to you, right? Last week, I talked about how if you read the First and Second Kings, it really reads like the Game of Thrones to me, right? And so you remember, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you remember what happened as Daenerys started to move forward and she started to gather her army and gather more people. Eventually, she would get to a city where she would get there and they were already like, we're good, you got dragons. We are not trying to mess with you, right? So this is what was happening with the Gibeonites in the story, right? They had heard what was going on. They heard that all these people are being killed. The numbers continue to change because we have different writers. So at some point, we hear that Joshua has 30,000 soldiers. Other times we read he has 5,000. The point was he had a whole bunch of people, according to the story, and they were just massacring folks. So the Gibeonites, they were smart. They were like, hey, we're not going to even pretend like we have anything. They hid all of their gold and all of their wealth and surrendered. Later, Joshua finds out that they lied, and his response is he makes them slaves. Now, why is that interesting? Do y'all know something about Joshua? When we first meet Joshua in the text, what is Joshua? He was a slave. Joshua was part of the original group, according to the story, that was with Moses and Aaron and all of them, Miriam and all of them. They crossed through the Red Sea. Yeah, they saw that miracle, right? All that stuff happened. Wilderness, 40 years. And now he got the nerve to enslave somebody else? We have to question the text. We have to look at, this is what's happening. It makes absolutely no sense. But we understand that this is evil, what we're seeing here. This is injustice. This is abuse of power, is what we're seeing here. This is theft, is what we're seeing here. So then the question comes, is there any redeeming value in reading this text? Is there any reason to read these stories or memorize these stories or study these stories? And so the first thing I want to invite you to just take in, and I say this often, is that when we read the Bible, we must understand that we're looking at and working with myths, allegories, and stories that were designed to hide a deeper meaning or a deeper truth in plain sight. When I say myth, I'm not really talking about whether it's factual or not. As I shared last week, the purpose of these stories, Deuteronomy through 1st and 2nd Kings, was not to tell historical fact. And we can see that in the text, because in the text, the writer says, as for everything else that the king did, is it not written in the annals of the book of Kings? So the writer was saying, there's a whole other book that will give you history and fact. That's not what I'm doing. I'm writing a nationalistic story to make you believe that our kingdom is the best kingdom, and to make you believe that Josiah is indeed God's chosen king. That was the purpose. So in this sense, we're not talking about whether this is history or fact, but we recognize that what the ancient stories were always doing, and we see this not just in the Bible, we see this all throughout the ancient Near East. This is what the writers and the storytellers did. They hid deep truths in plain sight in these stories. And so what we get then are the inner mysteries and the outer mysteries. The outer mysteries are the stories as we read them. The outer mysteries are the stories as we read, oh, Joshua did this, and God said to walk around the walls, and the walls came tumbling down, and then God said, go here and kill these people, and they did that. And then God said, go over here and steal their stuff, and they did, right? Those are the outer mysteries. And according to the Kabbalistic tradition, it's important that we read and understand this. This is why we have Sunday school, to understand these stories and get these stories in our minds, so that when we reach the age of maturity, which in the Kabbalistic tradition is the age of 40, we can then be revealed and taught the inner mysteries. And so the inner mystery is a threefold path that is always happening, and we find this story, this path over and over and over again. It's the path of gnosis, it's the path of knowing, it's the path of enlightenment. It starts with purification, then death of the old self, And then finally, realization of oneness or enlightenment. If you read the Joseph story, it takes you through those 3 stages. The Moses story takes you through those 3 stages. The Joshua story takes you through those 3 stages. Elijah and Elisha, those same 3 stages. And the Jesus story, the same 3 stages. Again, purification, death of the old self, realization of oneness or enlightenment. And what's interesting is that this threefold path actually is symbolized in the path of the sun. In fact, this is what the ancients did. See, the ancients used what they witnessed in the heavens and then personified those movements in stories and myths that, as it was told over and over again, these stories grew larger and larger. And so that's why sometimes you'll hear a story and there were 10 people, and then there were 1,000 people, and then there were 30,000 people. Because, and again, I shared this last week. I invite you to go to the sermon, What's in Your Bible, because I break down this history a little bit more. That there are 4 schools of writers that actually wrote the Old Testament. And so we're finding, and within those schools are multiple writers over many years, first recognizing that these stories were just told orally, and so they changed over time. But even once they were finally written down and codified, then the varying stories from the 4 different schools were mashed together, and sometimes that's where why the biblical text can be confusing, right? Or sometimes it repeats itself, or sometimes it'll say they went to a certain city, and then the next line they're mentioning another city, but they're supposed to be in the same place. Those are the reasons why. And so we find this. One of the things I love, for me, I really became fascinated with this idea as a child when I saw the movie, the classic 80s movies, Clash of the Titans. And I became fascinated with the Greek stories. So this was the story of Perseus. But all of the gods are there. And again, this is what the Greeks were doing. They were taking what they saw in the heavens. Perseus is a constellation. And they began to personify the movement of that constellation into stories. Every one of the gods are representative of planets, and every one of the planets, of course, we see their movement. And so they began to tell these stories as you're seeing the planets interact with the sun, or the sun moving in and out of certain planetary houses, or in and out of certain constellations. That became the stories. And so this ancient myth is retold over and over again. In the story of Osiris, it's told over and over again. In the story of Dionysus, it's told over and over and over again. In the story of Mithras and Serapis. If you want to do even more study, I invite you to check out these 3 sermons: the Seed of Possibility, Now You've Crossed the Line, and The Captive, the Called, the Chosen. And so much of what I'm sharing is really building on what's been shared in those sermons. And so, again, I asked this question: is there any redeeming value? Like, why should we even read these stories? What could we possibly glean? How can we find some inspiration? How can we find some hope from these stories that are massacres? Well, again, as we understand that there's an inner and outer mystery, I want to talk about the inner mystery of this story and what was being hidden in plain sight. Now, it takes some study, and we have to understand something interesting about Judaism and about the Hebrew religion, or the Hebrew cult, as it was developed. One of the interesting things about the Hebrew cult is that it's considered a lunar cult. One of the things that we see and we read in the Bible, how there are all these different factions and different ways of believing and different ways of practicing, and whose God is better than the other God. And what was really happening on a certain level, you have those who were a lunar cult, right? And the moon was their heaviest influence. You had others that were a solar cult, and the sun was a heavier influence. This began, of course, becomes then the roots and the origins of Christianity. Because we recognize that as Christianity became the dominant religion in the Western world, the king was actually a sun worshiper. And so what began to happen, he merged the ideas of the sun with the story of Jesus, so that he could unite his kingdom. And so this is why we have these ideas of Jesus being the bright and morning star, and that use of sun and son of man, it has to do with the S-U-N and S-O-N. And so understanding that the Hebrew cult is a lunar cult, it gives us some interesting ideas. Now, the evidence is present in the text, but it's also present in modern day practices. One of the things, if you watch and you see men who are Jewish, what do they wear on their heads? It's a kippah or a yarmulke, yes? That's a little moon. That's what that is, and that comes from the ancient time. And one of the other things that's interesting is Judaism is based on the lunar calendar. All of the holidays and the way things are witnessed and marked is based on the lunar calendar, not the Gregorian calendar. And what's interesting to me about this is that where this actually started, if we dig into the ancient roots of it, it's rooted in the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as below, so above. And what that means is that whatever is true of the heavens must be true here on earth, and vice versa. And so what the ancients began to do, they began to witness something very interesting about the feminine. They recognized this 28-day-ish cycle that was happening. And they looked up in the sky and they said, the moon is doing that 20-day-ish cycle as well. And so they understood that there's something powerful going on in here. And so this is where and how and why the feminine became very important, and even sometimes why we see the push and pull between honoring the feminine and dishonoring the feminine, because what we're seeing is which cult is trying to take power, right? If you're a lunar cult, you have to put the feminine forward, right? But if you're a solar cult, which is the masculine, then you're going to start to put that forward. And so we're starting to see where that thing starts to happen. And so what's interesting about that, according to tradition within Judaism, each month, according to the lunar calendar, right, the new moon is the beginning of the month. And so according to tradition, women are honored. It's a time where women don't work, right, where they get to just be, many times just doing whatever it is that they want to do, sometimes going to the temple and praying. But it's a time to honor the feminine in that way. Now, we also understand something interesting. According to the lunar calendar, we have the 7-day week. And again, this is so important because this comes from Judaism, right? This is why we have the 7-day creation. It's based on the 7 planets. Yes, yes? We understand that, right? That's the reason we have the 7-day week. And we understand something interesting, that after 4 cycles of 7, what do we get? A month, 28 days. Moon, month. It's the same root. And so again, we get this word because of the moon. We get this word because of the lunar calendar. And so if we recognize that, there's something even deeper that happens. Because the lunar calendar, unlike the Gregorian calendar, we know that every 4 years in February we add another day, right? We have 29 days. Well, in the lunar calendar, it works different. There's a 19-year cycle, and so they have leap years. And so in their leap years, there are actually 13 months instead of the what we consider normal, the 12 months. And so having the 13 months, then we understand that 13 is a sacred number. A number that's related to the feminine. It's a sacred number in the Hebrew tradition. Because if we look at the lunar calendar, it has 364 days in that calendar. And if you divide 364 by 28, which is a month, you get 13 equal cycles. And so 13 is a sacred number. It's a holy number. It's a feminine number. And so given that information, let's go back to the text. The Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have handed Jericho over to you, along with its king and soldiers. You shall march around the city, all the warriors circling the city only once. Thus you shall do for 6 days, with 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, the priests blowing the trumpets." Now, what's interesting to me, when we look at the text, does anybody know what Jericho means? It means moon or its moon. That's what the word means. And so, as we read that, then we hear an understanding that this is an astrotheological text. Jericho meaning moon, and this text telling us something about circling around this thing. The 7 priests then would represent the 7 planetary bodies, and they're holding the 7 trumpets, which represent the 7 days. The sun, the moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. And if you look at the number of times that they marched around, it says, "You shall march around the city, all the warriors circling only once for 6 days." And then on the 7th day, how many times do they march? 7 times, for a total of how many times?
13.
What did we just say about 13? And so this one little tidbit in the story contains the wisdom of the heavens. It contains the wisdom of the lunar calendar. And what the ancients were seeking to do by putting it and hiding it within the story, it was enabling us to remember, or enabling the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, to remember the rhythm and the cycles and what was important about the heavens and what was important to them. And so this is why these things are hidden in the stories. Now at the time, again, it was revealed. It wasn't given as a literal story to then allow people to simply believe the literal story. It was given to commit to memory, and then eventually the inner mystery would be revealed. Because what this then does, it creates this beautiful cycle. There's so many other clues in the text. If you go before this chapter 6, and you go to chapter 5, one, we find that Joshua celebrates the Passover. And what's interesting about that tells us where we are in the story from a celestial point of view, right? That's telling us that we're in the sign of Aries. And then additionally, we find that when Jericho is introduced, it says when Joshua was next, in Gilgal, Joshua was next to Jericho. Gilgal is another interesting word. And it's related to the same way that Galilee is used in the Second Testament or the New Testament. Because Gilgal means wheel or circle or to turn. And so that clue from the writers is showing us, okay, y'all, I'm talking about the zodiac now, which is a circle. Anytime you see Galilee, the same thing in the text. It's like, oh, wait, here's the circuit. Galilee means circuit. Here's the circle. I'm talking about, there's some astrological information here. And then it takes us into this story of the Battle of Jericho. And so again, understanding that and having that is where it's important. So why do I share this with you today? I'm almost done. Because the title of this message is The Power of Cycles and Seasons. The ancient Hebrew writers thought it fitting to codify and mythologize the great movement of the heavens and the planetary bodies, to personify them as people, places, battles, betrayals, and victories. The cycle of the moon was important to them. The cycle of the sun was important to them. And all of this is hidden in plain sight. It's even hidden in plain sight in our own world. Today is Sunday because it's a day that honors the energy and power of our biggest star in the sky. Tomorrow is Moon Day because it honors the power and energy of the moon. And what's interesting, when we move away from English, it becomes very clear, right? We understand Martes, if you speak Spanish, Mars Day, the power and energy of Mars. And we move on, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. That's hidden right in plain sight. Every time we utter the words Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we are calling on the energy of those planets. We are acknowledging that there's some energy there. And it's interesting if you start to think about this, and this is where I'm talking about cycles and seasons. Because I love, for instance, Friday is Venus Day. Do y'all know what Venus is? Y'all know what Venus represents? And so you have this beautiful opportunity to live in the vibration of love, recognizing that every week you get to reaffirm and be reminded that love is. And so when we tap into these power of cycles and seasons, again, looking at what's hidden in plain sight, one of my favorite things to look at, what's hidden in plain sight, is how we use time, how we mark time. We have the hour hand and we have the second hand. We have the hour and we have the minute. Yes? Hour represents the movement of the sun. Because that word hour is related to and comes from the word Horus, which was a recognition of the sun. Hour and minute. Min is, again, taking us back to moon. And so when we look at the hour hand moving and the minute hand moving, we're watching the sun and moon. We're watching this beautiful dance. And what I love about that, when we start to think about that, and this is something powerful to tap into, and I guarantee you won't look at a clock the same. Because there's something that's happening. There's a cycle that's always happening that we're unaware of, but many times we feel stuck. Because if we look at the hour hand, right, an hour technically takes a long time, right? An hour, we got to go through a whole 60 minutes. But a minute takes how long? 60 seconds. A minute just moves, right? And it moves, and it moves. Because that's how the moon moves. Right? We go through an entire year. We go, according to our Gregorian calendar, we go through our entire solar year. It takes a while to go from January to December. But every 28 days, the moon is moving. Yes, yes. Every 28 days, there's a cycle. So what if you were in an experience in your life where you felt stuck? What if you were in an experience in your life where it felt like things were moving real slow? Because maybe you had your attention and your focus on the hour hand instead of the minute hand. Because if we understand that there's a cycle that's always moving, if we understand that there's a season that we're always moving in and out of, we have the power, capability, and possibility to focus on the season that's in alignment with what it is that we're trying to create. And so if you feel stuck, if you feel like things are moving slow, turn your attention to the moon. This is what the Jewish people were inviting us to do, to understand that there's this cycle, there's this movement that's happening, and there's a season that I get to choose in this moment. If I create my reality, if I can speak those things that are not as though they were and experience it as a manifestation in my life, if I can see it in my mind and then hold it in my hand, I have the power to focus. And so fittingly enough, this Friday is Friday the 13th. And never again will we look at 13 as unlucky. Never again will we look at 13 as evil. Never again will we look at 13 as something wrong, because we understand, oh, this is that cycle of the feminine. It gets even more beautiful because on the East Coast at 12:35 or 25 on the East Coast, it's the full moon. So essentially Friday night, we have the full moon. We have this energy that we've been talking about, right? That's codified right here in the Jericho story, in the Joshua story. The power of 13, the power of the full moon. And so as we understand the metaphysical principle of vibration, that nothing rests, that everything moves, life is always vibrating. This is the truth. This is a physical principle as well. These chairs that you're sitting in appear to be solid, but if you had a microscope, you would see that the molecules, the elements that make it up are actually moving, because nothing is at rest. Everything moves, everything vibrates. And then we have the principle of rhythm, the metaphysical principle of rhythm, which says everything flows out and in, everything has its tides. All things rise and fall, the pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. And so if we understand that there's always movement, there's always vibration, and there's always rhythm, then, as I said earlier, we get to choose the cycle and the season. If we get to recreate our reality, you know, sometimes we see somebody and we say they're marching to the beat of a different drum, right? And what I was thinking about, rhythm really teaches us the exact same concept that we see in the hour and the minute, but even in a deeper way, right? Because in rhythm, if you have a whole note, right, you just clap 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, right? And that's a movement, right? 1, 2. But then you can take that same thing and add the quarter notes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And there's movement, right? There's a different type of movement. But those quarter notes are within the whole note. But then what's in the quarter notes? The eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And then you can add 16 notes. 1, 2. And so we recognize the whole, the quarter, the eighth, the 16th. Again, all of those pulses exist at the same time within. You have the power to choose which rhythm you want to dance to. You have the power to choose which rhythm you want to focus on. You have the power to choose. Are you going to focus on the rhythm of things don't work out for me? Or are you going to focus on the rhythm of things are always working out for me? Are you going to focus on the rhythm of the worst is yet to come or the best is yet to come? This is the power of cycles and seasons. In truth, as we understand, again, moving through the calendar year, January to December, but every 24-hour period actually reflects the same movement of the sun. We go in 2-hour increments, right? And I love to think about it. When we move from midnight to 11:59, we experience it, right? The sun rises and falls, right? On that faster level. And then we also see the sun rise and fall as it moves up into the northern hemisphere and goes back down into the southern hemisphere and back up again and down. The cycles are always happening. Which one do you want to focus on? Because if it's true, as above, so below, which it is, and then as within, so without, the same cycle that you see in the planets and in the heavens, it is always existing right within you. So again, you may have been focusing on that slow solar energy. Nothing wrong with the solar energy. I'm not saying that. But I recognize if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling fixed, if it feels like things aren't moving at all, one, that's a lie. Everything moves, everything vibrates. You're just on a certain cycle. And so if that cycle does not feel good to you, then you have the opportunity to turn your mind and to turn your attention, to remind yourself, I'm not stuck. To remind yourself that you're not limited, to remind yourself that there is no lack, there is no limitation. You can remind yourself, as we look to this story, how the moon works. You can remind yourself of the power of 13. You can remind yourself of the power of the feminine that's exemplified, and knowing that you can create any experience that you desire. With that, I invite everybody to stand. The best is yet to come. And so we choose to align ourselves with that cycle. There are a whole lot of cycles out here. The current news cycle may be telling you something that you don't really want to align yourself with. The current news cycle about people that look like you might not want to align with that cycle. The current news cycle about what's possible, what the statistics say about this one or that one, you might not want to align with that cycle. But as we recognize that there are multiple cycles happening at the same time, we in consciousness choose to align with the cycle that is beneficial. We in consciousness choose to align with the cycle that is affirmative. We choose to align in consciousness with the cycle that says nothing but good can come from this. And so I invite us all to just take a deep breath in and we release. We breathe in and we breathe out. There's a cycle that we can bring our minds to. So many of us are holding our breath. But we can tap back into the cycle of breathing in and out easily and effortlessly. And so as I breathe in and breathe out, I recognize that I am breathing you in and out, Mother, Father, God. For I recognize you are in all, through all, and as all. Every molecule that I breathe into my body is a God molecule. Every molecule that I breathe out of my body is a God molecule. I recognize that you are everywhere present at all times, present in the rays of the sun that are filling the space, present in the sound and the sphere and the ethers upon which this sound actually travels on. I recognize that you are everywhere present at all times. And as I recognize that you are everywhere present, I recognize who and what you are, that you are love itself. I recognize that you are all wisdom, all knowledge, all power. And I recognize that you are constantly encountered. If I'm in the valley, you are there. If I'm in the heavens, you are there. The subway, you are there. If I'm in the car, you are there. If I'm on a bus, you are there. I recognize that you are constantly encountered. Right here and right now, you are here. And as I recognize that you are here now and always here, not because of my invocation, but because that's just how you operate, I choose here and now to speak this word in faith. I am so grateful and thankful for the cycles and the seasons. I am so grateful and thankful for the ebb and the flow, for the rising and the falling, for the swing to the left and to the right. And I am so grateful and thankful to know that by the power of the law of neutralization, I have the power to raise my mind up in consciousness and choose. I'm so grateful and thankful that I have the opportunity to neutralize my mind, to neutralize my thoughts, and align with that which is beneficial, and align with that which is fruitful, and align with that which is kind, and align with that which is just, and align with that which is equal, and align with that is for the highest benefit of all. I forgive myself and I set myself free. For any time that I aligned with that which was against me, I forgive myself and I set myself free for the times that I aligned with limitation. I forgive myself and I set myself free for the times that I aligned myself with the world story about me. I forgive myself and I set myself free when I aligned myself with my old partner's story about me. I forgive myself and I set myself free for the story that I believed that I couldn't have a child at the age that I was supposed to have a child, or I can have a child later. I forgive myself and I set myself free for the words that I believe, for the diagnoses that I believe, for the limitations that I believe. I forgive myself and I set myself free right here and right now. In consciousness, I move myself to a new cycle. In consciousness, I align myself with a new season. In consciousness, I place myself into the season, just as the scripture says, being a tree planted by the rivers of water, knowing that I will yield fruit in and out of season. I align myself with that right now. I align myself with the fruitful life. I align myself with the beneficial life. I align myself with the protected life. I align myself with the nurtured life. I align myself with the healed life. I align myself with the harmonious life. I align myself with the prosperous life. I align myself with the God life. For all of these things are simply attributes of you. And as I recognize the absolute truth that we are not responding to you, but you are responding to us, I get really clear about where my vibration is. I get really clear about what it is that I'm expecting. I get very clear about the cycle that I am choosing to live on and operate on. And I know that with ease and effortlessness, you always respond to the cycle that I choose to be on. I know with ease and effortlessness, when I declare and decree that this is my season of harvest, so it is. I know that when I declare and decree that I am abundant always, at all times, in all things, so it is. I know that when I declare I am healed right now, so it is. I know that when I declare and decree that my relationships are healed, it is. I know that as I declare I am safe right here and right now, it is. I know that as I declare I have everything I need and more, it is. I know that as I declare right here and right now that I am protected and provided for, it is. I know that as I declare and decree right now that every good idea comes to me easily and effortlessly, so that I may be great on this planet, so that I may be fruitful on this planet, so that I may multiply my thoughts and my minds and be a beneficial presence on this planet. It is. So it is with joy, it is with thanksgiving, it is with gratitude, it is with full expectation and confidence, knowing that my word is that I release this prayer right here and right now into the mind that created all things, into the mind that says yes and only yes. And so we lift up our voices and we say amen. It is so. Ashe, it definitely will be so, and so it is. So it is. Thank you, God. Probably a sermon you're going to have to revisit. There was a lot packed in there, but I pray that you found and heard what you needed to hear today that will move you through this week, that gives you something to chew on throughout the week. Yes, yes? And so as we prepare to shift gears, we're going to prepare for giving. If there's anyone, if you need an offering envelope, if you need a pen, please raise your hand. Our ushers are so very happy to support you and serve you. There's a couple hands here in the front. I want to take this time to thank everyone who has already given or is giving online. Thank you for supporting us in saving trees and being as efficient as possible. You can give online easily and effortlessly. You can grab your phone and go to our website, celebrationsc.org, and scroll down to the giving section. If you don't have a smartphone, you can go to the host table and use one of the iPads that are there at the host table. Additionally, if you prefer to text to give, the number is 347-744-9500. And for those that would like to in any way support today's event, maybe you weren't able to volunteer, but you would like to give financially, you will see the section there to give to Family and Friends Day. Or if you're texting, just text your dollar amount followed by the word family. We appreciate your support. Now for our first time guests, I want you to know that we teach something very specific and yet very simple here at CSC. We teach that giving is not about giving a certain amount. Giving has nothing to do with shaming you into, you must get in the $100 line, or you must get in the $20 line. It has nothing to do with that. And unfortunately, so many of us have been exposed to that false teaching. But what's absolutely true about giving, it's not what you give, but it's how you give. And how we give must be from a place of joy. And that joy must come from a place of knowing that abundance is, that there's more than enough. Whatever your chosen career is, or whatever your job is a resource. It's not the source. And most of us have lived long enough to know that those resources change and come and go. But there is something, there is some place, there is somewhere, it's a well that won't run dry, that continues to provide for us over and over and over again. The animals understand it. We are the only beings on this planet that worry about how am I going to get to next week or the end of the month. We're the only beings that do that. And Jesus so beautifully taught that in Matthew 6. Consider the lilies of the field, or the birds of the air. That's what he was talking about. Live like the rest of the beautiful beings that God created. There is more than enough for all of us. And so then when you understand that, you're able to give in joy because you know that there's a receiving on the other side of it. So when we understand that and we give from that place, we affirm this truth. All the money that I use, returns to me multiplied, in a never-ending cycle, of increase and enjoyment. With that, I'll call our ushers forward. Let's take a very short song.
I give my love, more love comes rushing back to me. Thank you. I give my time, more time's available to me. Thank you. I give my treasures, doors are opening for me. As I give, I receive. Yes, Lord. Coming right back to me. I give my love, more love comes rushing back to me. Thank you. I give my time, more time's available to me. Thank you. I give my treasures, doors are opening for me. As I give, I receive. Yes, Lord. Coming right back to me. I give my love, more love comes rushing back to me. Thank you. I give my time, more time's available to me. Thank you. I give my treasures, doors are opening for me. As I give, I receive. Yes, Lord, coming right back to me. 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 Right back to me. Coming right back to me. Coming right back to me. Woo! Coming right back to me.
Right here, right now, let's all just extend our hands from our hearts and extend our hands forward. And as we breathe in and we breathe out, I remember and I know that, Mother, Father, God, you are the giver and the gift. And so we are grateful for the gifts that have been given, and we are grateful for the givers, those that have given from their hearts. We are grateful for those that have given with joy. We are grateful for those that have given with purpose. We are grateful for those that have given knowing that as they give, they receive. So right here and right now, we move into a place of expectation. We move into a place knowing that there are seeds that are being sown right now that will grow into something bountiful and powerful. We are so grateful for the seeds of gifts that have been planted in the heart and mind of CSC, and we know that this will turn into new ministries. We know that this will turn into our brand new building. We know that this will turn into offices and classrooms. We know that this will turn into new programs. We know that these seeds that have been given will continue to impact the entire world, that they will continue to impact beautiful souls all around this planet that are seeking this wisdom, that are seeking this truth. And we are so grateful and thankful and live in the place of expectation that this will grow in our lives. We look for the abundance. We look for the miracles. We look for the blessings. We look for the open doors, knowing that it must be by law. So it is with joy and thanksgiving that I release this prayer, and we say amen. Ashe. And so it is. Let's affirm this truth together. I give my love, more love comes rushing back to me. I give my time, more time's available to me. I give my treasure, doors are opening for me. As I give, I receive. Oh, all comes right. Bring them back to me. Just believe me, I can breathe. Right back to me. Back to me. Coming right. It's coming right. It's coming right back. Right on back to me. So today is Endless Summer, and Pastor Yolanda and the Divine Design team and all of the beautiful volunteers that have been working have created an absolutely gorgeous and amazing space for us to enjoy and fellowship with each other. The instructions that I've been given. The festivities do not begin until 1 p.m. Please do not go to the tent at 1:55. I'm sorry, 12:55, thank you. You will not be allowed in, okay? Feel free to hang out here, have a good time, walk around the block, do whatever you want to do. And then please be there at 1 p.m. Everyone will be invited in and seated. The other bit of information, and I know that Pastor Yolanda will give us this instruction again when we're there under the tent. We have made sure that we've set aside a portion of food and ordered a portion of food for our plant-based eaters. This is not the time to try out veganism. Right? This is really, we just want to make sure that we're honoring our plant-based eaters, knowing that many times you come to functions and there's nothing for you to eat, or all you can eat is salad, right? And so there are vegan meals for plant-based eaters, right? But everybody, please just do your best to be respectful of that. Again, today's not the day to try that out. By all means, change your diet later. But so with that, also I just want to remind. Oh, I see PY coming in now. PY, do you want to give us any other instructions? I relayed the data that you gave. 1 p.m. and I gave the plant-based instructions.
Oh, you did? So we're all clear. This ain't the day you do something new. Right? We're hoping to start at 1 o'clock. There's been some issues with the catering getting here, so they might be delayed like 5 minutes, okay? So hang tight. I will text you and tell you when we're ready to go downstairs, okay? It's going to be delicious. It's going to be fun. All right?
And as a reminder, next week is the God Talk. So it's an opportunity for you to bring your questions, your concerns. If you're hearing the message and you're like, Pastor Greg, this is some off-the-wall stuff you're talking. I have some deeper questions. Or, well, what about this and what about that? This is an opportunity to ask questions and also to apply these metaphysical principles to what's absolutely showing up in your life. Finally, if something has come up for you, if there's a fear, a doubt, a worry, something that you've been praying about, or something that came up you didn't realize it was bothering you that you're ready to let go of, please visit the altar before you leave. You see the sign. It says, leave your worries at the door. You're feeling good. You're feeling great. You're feeling changed. You're feeling transformed. Don't go outside and pick up that old problem again. Leave it at the door. Write it down, and our prayer champions will pray for it over it all week. This week, our prayer champion, Vanessa, who opened service. I think she's outside. She's working the kids' corner. She's in the back. Okay. She will be praying over your prayers, your worries, your fears, the things that are showing up, and knowing the truth. We do not beg or beseech God. We know what is true. And so she will be speaking that word on your behalf all week. And so when we live in this vibration, when we live in this consciousness, we've already affirmed the best is yet to come. And we leave here each and every Sunday knowing what? All things are possible. Yes, yes. Y'all gonna sing PY's part?
Yeah. Let's go. Now, all things are possible. Now, everything is possible.
Have an amazing week. We love you. We'll see you at 1 o'clock outside.
Hey, Mr. Drum Man. Yo, you
I haven't come on a Sunday like that.
You haven't been home?
No, I said I haven't come in on a Sunday like that.
Today.
That was the 13th, actually.
What is happening for you? Oh, okay.
I'm doing
What happened last night?
people just came to my crib.
Okay. You were like having people over, you guys had feeling around, you feeling like it was a good time. Oh, I love that.
Asking with each other's love.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's fellowship. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Dude, I want that so bad. I want one of those outfits like that, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. That's so fun. And every time I think I'm doing good at this, I'm on my phone. Every time